Thanks, Alan. So welcome to everybody this morning here and to whoever is watching online also. So again, another important event in the CITA Technology Workshop series. Presentations this morning promise to be very interesting and enlightening and provides us with an opportunity to keep up to the mark in terms of the very challenging and fast-changing construction industry environment. So without further ado, I think we should move along because we want to try and keep everything on schedule. So one of the things I'll be trying to do today is to keep on schedule. So I'll be keeping an eye on people who are have a particular time slot. So let's do that straight away. The first presentation will be by John Eynon. And John is architect, consultant and author and specialist in design management and pre-construction planning. His company Open Water Consulting. So without further ado, John, maybe if we could get you to start your presentation.
Good morning. Hi, I'm John. Thanks very much for this invitation to come here. I hope you don't live to regret it. I think there's a couple of things I just want to say before we sort of kick along here. Firstly, and I had a really good discussion with Alan and Ralph last night, and I think what you guys are doing here is truly inspirational, and I really don't want you to lose sight of that. I think across the water, and I will be presenting a UK perspective, so I apologise for that, but that's what I know. So I know something of what's going on over here, but I'm giving you the UK stuff. But you know, we hear all the time about what CITA are up to. There's always emails coming out, there's announcements, people pump it around, and the BIM community in the UK is very aware of you guys, and you are right at the forefront. I've always been aware of you for probably the last year, 18 months or so anyway. But I think as I've got to know more about you over these last few days, I think you're a leading light. The way you're doing stuff, organising things. So, BIM adoption, it's a hard journey. I accept that. We all know that. The people here at this meeting are not the problem. You know, if you're here, then you get this in some shape or form. It's the people outside, it's the people that aren't at these meetings that are the issue in enabling our industries to sort of take this forward. But don't lose sight of that. Keep the faith, and I think it's really, really good. And one thing we talked about last night was hubs, wasn't it? So I emailed David Philp last night, and I've had a response from him this morning, and I'd just like to read it to you. I don't think I'm breaking any confidences. But I'll read you what I said. I said, hi David, I'm with the guys at CITA at the moment and talking at their event tomorrow. We've been discussing various BIM things, as you do. However, one thing has surfaced which I just wanted to run by you. What do you think about CITA becoming affiliated to the hub network as the Dublin hub? It would work with the Northern Ireland hub and would help align BIM in Ireland, as there is unlikely to be a government mandate here for a while. But people work across the borders anyway, which, you know, everybody's working in the UK or elsewhere anyway. From what I can see, CITA operate like a hub anyway. And I think that's a good point. I think there's a lot we could learn from the way you guys operate, what you've done to raise funding, things you do, all that sort of thing. There's a lot of learning you could share, actually, with the hub network. Anyway, I think it would be great to formalise a link with them in some way. I'd be interested to see what you think. So David's just replied to me this morning, and I'll read his response. Hi John, hope you are enjoying a few stouts. We didn't have any stout last night. Please pass on my regards to Alan and the CITA team. I always wanted them to form a Dublin hub, and in principle a great idea. There are some politics involved, of course. However, I will set the ball in motion today. So I think watch this space. I think it'd be great if you guys plugged into the CIC BIM Hub network. I'm the South East chairman. It's gradually ramping up in activity, but I think there's lots of stuff we could share and work together, and I think it'd be good for us all, actually, in collaborating and working together. Okay, that's enough of a rant. Let's crack on. This is me. I do stuff, as we all do. I represent the CIAB on various industry BIM groups in the UK. I'm chair for the South East Regional Hub, and a quick plug, I'm author of the CIAB Design Managers Handbook. Any design managers here? No, I mean design managers. Any design managers? No design managers. Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. Well, you better go and find them then, because they should be here. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. So, support your local BIM hub. We've done that. So, let's crack on. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a basic introduction about stuff and sort of digital environments. I'm going to talk a bit about the UK construction strategy and BIM. I'm going to look at pre-construction process, and I am going to talk about process rather than technology, really. And there's lots of guys here who are going to demonstrate technology later, and they have far more knowledge and can do it far better than I can. So that's okay. And then I'm going to talk about the CIAB BIM strategy, which we've just got signed off at the members forum last week. So you'll have all the slides, so you can look at it at your leisure, but I'll give you a brief overview. Give a shit. Okay. Now, we discussed this last night. And this is one of Paul Morell's slides, basically. And as you will see, pointer's very faint, but this is just about giving a shit about stuff related to age. And again, we had it's peaking round about 2030. I'm off the scale over here somewhere. But anyway, as us oldies or baby boomers slope off to retirement, we just don't give a, do we? But that's not the case, really, is it? I think this graph is a bit unfair. But I think it's the basic, getting the thing across that, just in overall terms, if you're in mid or late career and you're thinking, or anybody, you talk with anybody who's thinking they can dodge this stuff, dodge BIM, then just really take them out at the kneecaps, because it's wrong. I think this digital evolution that we're now all part of, whether we like it or not, and whether we're aware of it or not, it's just taking over our lives and it's taking over the industry. And whatever stage in career you're at, you can't avoid it. And I think within a few years, I think it will be very quickly the case that if you haven't got the appropriate skills related to your role in the industry, you won't get the best jobs, you won't get the best packages, you won't have the career development. And people will migrate to the companies that do that stuff. So that there's a different sort of imperative there in terms of business continuity, business expansion in terms of skills and training and all that people type of thing. So, and the other side of this is, and again, this is something I would discuss with Eynon last night, and I'd lay this challenge down to you, actually, because I'm just an outside speaker. I can come in here and say what I like. Whether you do it or not is up to you. But there's a number of BIM 4 groups in the UK strategy, like BIM for SME, BIM for infrastructure, BIM for retail, BIM for clients, da-da-da-da-da. There's also the BIM 2050 group, which is composed of young professionals. Probably, actually, I didn't ask the question. Anybody, how many people here have been born since round about 1980, 83? Hands up. It's okay, don't be shy, I'm not going to do anything with you, but you put hands in the air so I can see you. Okay. Right, so there's enough of you. The BIM 2050 group is composed of young professionals, and they're looking at how the digital environment and life applies to the careers and how it's going to change the industry. Because it's the Generation Y, it's the millennials, if you're into generational stuff and demographics, these are the guys that are really going to drive the change through. Because digital stuff is in your DNA. You've been using it all your lives, you've grown up with PCs, the internet, email, Twitter, Facebook, blah, you've had the lot. And you've always had it. And you just use it because it's part of what you do. And as you go through your career and get into positions of leadership, leading businesses, leading projects, you will change the way we work. and you will push people like me, Alan, and everybody else our age out of the way. You know, because you're like a train and you're coming through. And so my challenge to you, CITA, is set up your own CITA 2050 group. And I'd like to see it composed of young professionals. Plug yourselves into the BIM 2050 group through that young professional David Philp and get something going, because I think that would be really, really good, because you guys, you know, going back to the inspirational thing, you've got something really good going here, but actually now think about the younger professionals coming through to do something, and they'll give you a different perspective. They'll create their own energy and they'll push you out the way, because they're going to do it anyway. So give some space to operate. Okay, so let's give a shit out of the way. And this is really just emphasising how digital life has changed. You know, we have all this digital stuff. It gives us a truly global reach. And the backbone of it is digital data and information exchange. It puts us in touch with all sorts of people like society, communities, all our friends and colleagues on Facebook. Anybody out on the web, if you are watching this, assuming there is somebody there, do email some questions in, or however it's going to work, and I'll be really interested to see what that generates. But this whole digital connectivity puts us in touch with all sorts of people. If Facebook were a country, it would be the third largest in the world behind India and China, because it has over 1 billion users. Facebook was only formed in about 2004. So it's less than 10 years. You know, this is the pace of change that we're dealing with. You know, on this slide, the individuals at the bottom of all this huge mass of stuff. But actually, another way of looking at it is it puts us right at the centre. All this stuff is accessible to us anytime we want. So that's how digital life is now for us. So moving to BIM, the I in BIM is about information. And technology is important, but I think it's very easy to get sidetracked by it, because we've got all these, as John, where is he? I don't know where, he's around there. John was saying before, having all these wonderful toys to play with now, you know, is just fantastic. Great, you know, but just because we have all this stuff, you know, doesn't mean to say we just have to keep doing things with it without thinking about it. And I'm very much into basically our understanding of process should drive our application of the technology. You know, because at the end of the day, put the technology to one side, the things that we're sort of doing remain the same. Clients still want things, designers still design things, subcontractors still make things and put them in, main contractors still tender for stuff and build things, and then building operators still, or asset operators if it's infrastructure, you know, they still come in and they operate things. It's just that we're doing different things, but actually we're still pushing information around the same sort of cycle of brief, design, construction, operation, but we're just using different technologies. And we can do some clever things with it. Now, if you're familiar with the story of Pandora's box, then this is when evil is supposedly let out into the world. And for all those that you talk with that say, oh, this digital stuff, it's really not for me. Well, you know, like we were saying, go to the ATM, get your money. That's a digitised environment. You know, get your music on your computer, you know, download it. That's a digitised environment. Look at how iTunes has transformed the music industry within the last 10 years. It's totally changed the financial basis of how the music industry works and how artists get paid and how production companies work. iTunes was only brought out about 10 years ago. You know, and I think the whole point here is the digital environments and technologies transform industries beyond an incremental change. It's an evolutionary step change. And this is what's going to happen and is happening to the construction industry, albeit we're virtually last to the party of the major industries. Aerospace, automotive, nautical, petrochem, they've all done this stuff and been doing it for years, decades even. It's just that we're very late to the party. So we're surrounded by this stuff. And if you're familiar with the concepts of big data now, because of the processing power we have in computers, we can do all sorts of things with masses and masses of data. So people can track your financial transactions and predict what you're going to buy next week. They send you the coupons when they know that your supply of washing up liquid has just run out or is about to run out because they know you bought that a few weeks ago. You know, so you're going to buy this. There's all sorts of things that they can do. Your credit score, that's big data. You know, people processing everything you're up to, you know. The PRISM thing and the US government. Big data with a slightly darker side to it. But, you know, it's all, this is the environment we live in now. If you've got a credit card, if you've got a mobile phone, if you've got an internet connection, if you've got an email account, if you've got a Facebook, if you've got a Twitter, you have a digital footprint whether you like it or not. And somebody in a dark room with lots of computing power can find out lots of things about you. And that is the world we live in now. So that's big data. And when big data really kicks in the building industry, we'll see some fun. You know, assessing the performance of suppliers or products or particular people in teams, all sorts of things. I don't know. I'll throw in some resources. I won't dwell on it too much. There's lots of free stuff available. The things in red are the things that I recommend you read. The top 3 are free. You just download them. BIM Demystified is a good book, basic book on BIM, plain language. Other stuff. Some good websites. Main one for the UK is the Task Group website, taskgroup.org. There's lots and lots of guidance there now that you can download for free. There's a lab space where you can access stuff in progress. If you want more information, just get in touch with me and I'll point you in the right direction. If you want to read anything, get hold of this. This is virtually still hot off the press. It's the latest report by Richard Saxon, who's the CIC UK BIM ambassador. Growth through BIM. It's a really good, concise, state-of-play assessment of BIM in the UK and also where it's going and how it's going to help UK PLC. UK BIM. Might be familiar with the construction strategy brought out a couple of years ago. 2 main thrusts, which was to reduce public sector procurement costs by about 20% and also to meet our carbon targets. The 1 year on report, again available free on the website, lists a whole load of things. But the main thing is the Ministry of Justice are so impressed with BIM on the projects they're doing. They brought the level 2 target forward to the end of this year. So in the UK, if you work in the custodial sector and you're not doing BIM, you won't have any work after 2013. So the guillotine is dropping, you know, and that's where the mandate is kicking in. There's also a load of guidance that was issued at the end of February, again, all available free, either on the Task Group website or on the CIC website. Red things are things that are really, I think, are really, really important. I mean, it's all important, but the digital plan of work, if you use the RBA plan of work, you'll be aware that that's now been updated, and that aligns with the digital plan of work. There's COBE tools there, PAS 11.2 about process and so on. And one of the latest surveys in EMA puts UK as second to Finland, although there is talk that actually we're getting to first spot sometime this year. Pre-construction BIM. Okay, that was a bit of a whistle stop. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm trying to crack on. If you're familiar with the Avanti project, which sort of started BS 1192-2007, and the work that Murphy Richards and others did, then a lot of the work they did found that construction information generally, in old money, was uncoordinated, ambiguous and incomplete, and it leads to lots of problems, but mainly increased risk, increased costs, huge waste because of rework, wasted time, wasted effort, and also people making assumptions to fill in the gaps, which leads to conflicts because what I assume isn't necessarily what you want, and so we start arguing, and then we get a claim and all sorts of stuff. In terms of information that we move in a digital environment, and this, I haven't got the PAS 1102 diagram on this, but it talks about 3 types of information and tracks that through the project process. So graphical, 3D geometry, non-graphical data, which might be stuff in a database that you attach with the geometry, like performance information, costing, quantities, time, technical information, O&M information and so forth. And then documentation, which is basically anything else kicking around in terms of paper and other stuff. And if you might be familiar with Archer, which is, sorry to Autodesk for showing this actually, but wherever you are, the Archer is a sort of field BIM application which helps sort of tie these things together and basically uses an SQL database alongside the geometry to hold and pull all this data together, information together, so that you're effectively using the model almost like a user interface to access bits of information, pull it down. And you can use this in a mobile situation that you're probably familiar with anyway, so you take it around on your iPad, pull stuff down, you can do stuff, synchronize it and so forth. So it's all at the Bartlett conference yesterday. They were talking about the future's mobile. All this stuff will be on our tablets and phones increasingly. And in fact, I think it was Phil Bernstein said something like, within the next year, the way purchasing is going, there'll be more mobile CPUs sold in the world than desktops. So we're all migrating to a mobile style. Add that up to the connectivity, the digital environment, you know, all sorts of stuff. And they showed a demo of Google Glass and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's just amazing, you know, an augmented reality, all these things happening. It's just amazing the way the technology is just moving on, and we'll be just moving along with it. And people will have to move with it because they'll just be caught up in the flow of it. So you're probably aware of all the sorts of, these are all the sort of fancy things that we can do in a BIM environment. We're still pushing information around in the same sorts of processes, in a sort of way, the same sort of project process. But it just means that in a digital environment, we can do all sorts of different things. You know, there's apps, plugins, all sorts of things. Now, in a pre-construction sense, I just want to dwell on this a bit. Well, actually, I probably don't need to point to it, do I? There's a number of things that particularly apply in a pre-construction mode. I'm assuming we're here somewhere between tender and before we're on site. So, you know, what we'll be doing, and it depends really who's leading the team, but actually it doesn't really matter as long as somebody is leading and coordinating how the BIM environment is working. So we'll be wanting to do clash detection and reporting. We're working in a composite federated environment. So we're pulling in different models from different designers. We're running clash detection and other reports. We can do various kinds of simulations for daylighting, fire performance, all that sort of stuff. We can pull some quants out for estimating, put that into an estimating package, do whatever we want to do with it, plug that back into the model. We'll be doing some logistics planning and time sequencing. So we'll be testing the build sequence and the logistics planning. If you're familiar with the Leadenhall project in London by Lang O'Rourke, there's a really good construction video on YouTube. It lasts about 10 minutes. But it just shows the process that they went through in putting that project together. I've got the link somewhere if anybody's interested, but you just Google Leadenhall building, Lang O'Rourke construction video, you'll probably find it. And it's just, I mean, it's a huge project. They had a big team working on it, but it just shows the sorts of stuff that you can do. Safety planning is a really good one, and I think the CDMCs. Do you have CDMCs over here? CDM coordinators. Similar, yeah. CDM guys tend to get pushed into a bit of a corner actually, but I think BIM, in a BIM environment, they can really come into their own, because I've seen BIM used for safety planning in terms of looking at plant rooms. You know, so you're walking through the plant room, you're checking whether you've got the right clearances, the right walkways, whether you need step overs in certain places, whether you've got the right access room to pieces of kit, whether you can actually take those pieces of kit out and actually get them out to replace them, all these sorts of things. And you can be doing this in a virtual environment. It's fantastic. You know, it's really, really good. Compliance and sort of validation. Again, this is why I was interested whether there are any design managers. As a design manager, I worked on site. Somebody says, "Oh, we've sent you the information," and a pile of a gazillion drawings ends up on your desk. And here I am with a red pen, you know, and I'm working into the night, checking that whether the architect has actually coordinated the steelwork or not. With BIM, pull the models into something like Navisworks or Solibri, run a clash check, let it cook for a while, and then out comes a clash report. Job done. And then I can say to the architect, actually chaps, you haven't sorted this out, go away and do it again. You know, and this is this sort of iteration. And I think basically what BIM helps us do is take some of the donkey work out of some of and the drudgery out of some of the things we have to do, and enables us actually to put some intellectual power now into what we do, which I think is really good. So what BIM does, it helps us open up this goldfish bowl where whatever you're telling me you've done, I or someone in my team can go check, and they can tell me very quickly whether you've done it or not. If you have, tick in the box. If you haven't, cross in the box, and we do it again till we get it right. And you can keep doing this. And this is really, really good. So you can do other things. BIM lends itself to off-site manufacture, pulling elements out the model, sending it to a computer-driven manufacturing facility. Again, Lang O'Rourke have invested millions in this in their plant at Steatley, where they do this with their supply chain. Life cycle assessment, supply chain management, so forth. Change control as well, because basically I think in this environment change control becomes even more important. If it moves, you've got to trap it. You've got to understand what are people doing. This is why process and control is really, really important. You've got to have a structured environment, you've got to have structured data sets, and everybody's got to be working to the plan. This is from the Design Manager's Handbook, and it's about design management really, but it equally applies to this. And it's just really to say, you know, the point, I call it the project envelope, where having gone through definition and procurement, which is effectively pre-construction, we get to a point where everything is agreed and you can put it in an envelope. So we know what we're producing, we know what it costs, we know how long it's going to take. And I just wonder in a BIM environment eventually whether we'll have longer lead-in periods and shorter periods on site. Simply because we know that, we all know this, but it's just we don't do it. If we actually finish everything properly before we start on site, the job will go better. We know that. So why do we keep starting on site with half the design finished and we haven't got all the supply chain stuff sorted out? Why do we do it? It's insane. You know, why don't we just say, no, this is mad. Let's finish the stuff, get it sorted, and then just go build it. And what's happening is gradually this will change the way we work. We'll have leaner teams on site. And this is where I keep going on about Lang O'Rourke, but they're one of the few people who are really doing it. They're looking to reduce their site teams by about 50%. Because you'll just have delivery people on site. You won't need designers on site. You won't need estimators on site. You know, you just need technical delivery people on site to deliver the job, because the job is designed. You'll be familiar with, this was exercise from the UK BIM group about aligning plans of work. This is where we are now in terms of the digital plan of work, which is the black line, and the new RBA plan of work, which is this. And these are really, really worth a look at if you haven't come across them already. The RBA has a nifty online tool It's all free, you just got to register for it. And you can download stuff, you can download templates and get access to all sorts of stuff. I'll put the links there so you can check that out. Moving on, I'm running out of time. I think basically in the pre-construction process, you might argue about the order I've put these things in, but these sorts of things are going to be happening, and an information manager is going to be coordinating this process. You know, basically, we receive some information, we check it, we validate it, we put it through Celebri or some sort of checking process, or Navisworks, BIM site, whatever. And then we coordinate the different models in the federated environment. We might do a bit of optioneering, look at alternatives, swapping some geometry around or some different products. We might run some simulations, do some compliance checks. Again, you can do building regulations checks, and that work is developing. Check compliance of the data, that it's completeness, all that stuff. Do a cost check. So you run it all, you know, pull some quants out, run some cost data from your cost data, benchmarking libraries, that sort of stuff. And then produce some outputs to everybody again and say, right, that's where we are. And then you go around the cycle again. And this sort of cycle could be happening in a tender phase or pre-construction till you get it right. You know, and people are using the phrase, you know, do it twice. So do it once in a virtual environment, get it right, and then just go out and build it. You know, and that is it. It should be that simple. And those are some of the tools that sort of inform this process, like the digital planner work, PAS 1192 process, the BIM protocol, which is actually a contract. It's a contract supplement for BIM, using BIM on a project. Simple thing, we know BIM, with no BIM, in the old ways of working, risk just goes up, uncertainty goes down. With BIM, we can create more certainty. We can take risk out of a project. You know, how any contractors here, I won't get you to declare your hand, but in a tendering situation, how much risk allowance do you put in a tender? 3, 4, 5%? Imagine if you could lop, say, at least half of that out at tender stage. That could win you the job. You could do that with BIM. And I think just a quick note, I'll wrap up very quickly. We get these things confused, and I think people think that BIM is procurement, you know, or BIM is process, or BIM is whatever, you know. But basically, you know, one informs the other, but they are different. You know, think about understand what is your procurement process. Understand what information that you need to inform that process. You know, so if you want to tie that into a plan of work, fine, okay. And then understand what level of development or model specification you need to inform that process at different stages. You know, I can tender on a stage 1 model. It just means that you'll have a lot of risk in that tender. You know, so it's a question of what you want. And I think the problem is a lot of people at tender stage do not understand what they're doing, and so they don't realise the implications of what they're going to end up with. And then the technology just informs that process. Always just follow the information and the activities in what you're trying to do, and think about it clearly. Because if you get it right before you start, it's more likely to work out. The problem comes when you just kick off, you don't put any process or plan in place, and you think, this isn't working, what do I do? You know, and you send for somebody like Ralph to try and dig you out a hole. You know, it's not good. Although Ralph wouldn't complain, I guess. No. So it's just following the process, being very clear about what's happening, and I think I would expect in the long term that BIM will help us to get our processes right and deliver better product. Back change, there's just by the hotel the jury's in, there is an old public phone. It's I took a photo of it this morning. I'm going to use it in my next presentation. It's got the handset ripped off it. It's got graffiti all over it. There was a time when that was state of the art. Somebody made that and they thought it was fantastic. And that was probably only a few years ago. Now it is obsolete. And that's a picture of some people in our industry. You know, the lesson here is, you know, there is a big change coming on a scale that we have not experienced before. And it will happen in all our lifetimes, unless I get run over by a bus as I leave this building. So BIM, I'll put the plan here. We've been trying to get involved and do stuff. This is our strategy, which I can now issue. It was signed off last week. This is our 3-year plan. David Philp, who leads the UK task group, is our chair on our steering group and has helped us put this plan together. Got some clear deliverables there. We're going to produce some guides. We're going to produce an e-learning platform which will be out later this year. And that's there for you to look at. And again, if you've got any queries on this, just get in touch with me anytime, no problem. But at the end of the day, you know, if you're familiar with the constructing excellence work, then you will know that actually the real value lies in the life cycle. Actually, how many people here are involved in operation, FM, that sort of end of stuff? Okay, just the one. You guys really are going to reap the most benefit from this. This is where we can create real value in the life cycle. Better performing buildings, better design buildings that create real value for the users. And if you're familiar with this work, the 1:5:200 is a bit discredited, but 1:3:30 as a ratio is still quite valid, and you start running some return on investment numbers based on that, and you still end up with big savings in the value chain, in the life cycle, which is, so if we just apply a little bit of expertise in the design, we can create huge value down the line for our clients. And that's where FM really kicks in, and that's why the government, UK government, has brought into this, because they see that using BIM and other lean techniques creates real value in managing the public estate, aligning data and all that sort of stuff. And of course this leads on to smart cities, smart environments, smart regions. You know, you've got digital Dublin, whatever that is, you know, so it's quite interesting, where we start to actually hook up different systems. So through energy, you see, coming back to big data, somebody using smart metering, they can tell when you've put the kettle on. They can tell when you've opened the fridge. You know, they can do all sorts of stuff with these things. And connecting all these different infrastructure systems and all sorts of digital data, you can do all sorts of clever things with it, analysing how cities work and people move and live and do all sorts of things. And these are examples. That's Rio de Janeiro, that's UAE, and this is South Korea. These are examples of smart cities being built, and systems being hooked up with sensors on everything from lampposts to bus stops to grids to all sorts of things. Bringing in data which is crunched through big processing houses to do all sorts of things. And it's where we're going. You know, it's what's going to happen. This is the world we now live in. It's happening already. And we also get these funky headsets as well. Now, supplied by Autodesk. Future, I haven't even talked about all this sorts of stuff. It'd be good to talk about this as well. But there's a whole load, and this is where the Generation Y and the 2050 group come in. You're going to be dealing with all these sorts of things that are affecting the way we live, the things we do, the buildings we design, and how they're going to be operating. We're all going to be living longer. You know, the economic models are broken. How's that going to work? We've got carbon, we've got climate change, energy costs are going up. You know, resource issues, all sorts of things. I think it's a great future, and I think BIM helps provide some of the answers. I'm just hoping that in becoming smarter digitally, we also become smarter as human beings in learning how to apply this technology to make our lives better. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's fine. Thanks, John, for that. Digital, if you're under 35, digital is in your DNA. I was really relieved at that because I was wondering why I was having the problem and all that was wrong with me really was that I was born too early. And also, I just check in with my 6-year-old granddaughter to, you know, in relation to that, and I was interested in your reference to the telephone box, because that same 6-year-old, a couple of months back, we were walking by in the local village, and she asked me, there was a telephone box, and she asked me what it was. So you're absolutely bang on in relation to that. Pre-construction BIM, longer lead-in times, pre-construction time, shorter time on site, only technical people delivering on site. And you made some reference there to, you know, checking everything beforehand, and it just reminded me of the old adage of, and it still applies, measure twice, cut once. It's the same thing in the digital BIM age, right? We're just going to give a few moments for questions. If anybody has any questions, I don't think we have a roving mic. We were trying to get one there. So, but if anybody has any questions, if you can just stand up wherever you are, based on John's presentation, we'll take the questions now. You might have to shout a little bit.
Dermot, you can, with microphone, repeat.
Yes, please. Yeah.
My question is, with 3 years to go to the introduction of BIM for public procurement in the UK, what are you predicting is going to happen in the next 3 years? Quite obviously, some companies have got on board. You mentioned Mango Road, but a lot of others probably are in denial. So what is going to happen?
Well, crystal ball here. One of the other slides I've got, but I didn't use it in this presentation, is it's one of David Philp's slides, which shows the UK government determination and how the programme is going to work over the next few years, running up to the 2016 deadline. There are now support officers working, I think, with all the major government departments who are looking at their processes, translating them into BIM, and the expectation is that probably around about mid-2015, all government departments in the UK will be BIM level 2 compliant, and that will be going out in all their procurement stuff. There'll be aligned procurement. It'll be COBE driven, so they'll be saying, you know, this is what we want at different stages, and these are the drops that you've got to provide, and this is the format. And I think for some people, you know, there's going to be an oh shit moment, because the problem is you can't just press a button and switch this stuff on overnight. Okay, technology, okay, you can download some software, but actually it's the process change. It's getting your head into the process and understanding how things work, and that takes time. For some people, they've got to unlearn a life of bad habits. And also, I think the construction industry, we seem to have this sort of maverick attitude where people are given a quality plan or something, saying, oh, sod that, I ain't going to do that, I'll just do it my way. Well, actually, in BIM, you have to work to the process. You have to follow the protocols, because you've got to have the structured environment. Otherwise, it just unravels. You know, you can't, it's a recipe for chaos. So I think to answer your question directly, I think there's a couple of things will happen. I think those that have already started the journey and have got some way in embedding it into their processes will begin to really reap the benefits this year. And I think we're beginning to see that in the UK, where there are clearly people operating in the marketplace. One, they're securing work because they just do BIM, so it's almost like a marketing thing. But they're also beginning to derive benefit out of it as well. And they're working better, and they're getting some real hard data in terms of performance. So they will start to pull away from everybody else. And then it's a question of how does everybody else respond to that? Because they will be taking their supply chains with them. You know, they'll be teaching them and learning them and coaching them in how to respond as well. So it's going to begin to filter. It's just a question of speed, really. But with there's another document which is on the list I put there, which is PAS 91, which is guidance on public sector procurement, particularly questions for pre-qualification documents. There is a BIM section in there, and it's already, and I've heard several examples already this year, although there were examples last year, I've heard about a lot more this year where public sector organisations, whether it's local authorities or other departments, are putting BIM questions in their tender requirements or their pre-qual requirements. And that's making people think, because they're thinking, Christ, what do I do about this? You know, because you've got to have an 1192 process, you've got to have a training program in place, you've got to have a protocol, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. You know, and you've got to have those answers. And there will become a point where it becomes a guillotine, and if you can't answer those questions properly, you'll be excluded from tender lists anyway. And that's going to be a wake-up moment for somebody as well. So I think it will. It's like the frog in the boiling pan. I think the temperature's rising. We haven't quite got to the point where the frog jumps out yet, but I think we're not far off. Cool.
Thanks for that.
Does the CIOB strategy include a stipulation for future construction managers to have new skill sets in this field?
Yes, yeah, I think that is one of the things we're looking at in terms of BIM competencies, and this is partly where the e-learning platform comes in, because there'll be a sort of, it's not really a qualification, but it's sort of, we're going down the line with sort of a certification process. So you do certain modules, you do a little test, you get some sort of certificate or accreditation that says you've achieved a certain level of awareness, basically. Where that will go in the long term is, I think there's got to be some joined up thinking about, well, do we want to create BIM qualifications, or should they just be part of people's skill sets? So, you know, construction manager and BIM, you know, QS and BIM, design manager and BIM, and so on. You know, and I think I would expect that's probably more the way it's likely to go, actually.
Yeah. Could I just ask you very briefly about the challenge posed by different vendors with different systems and the issue of interoperability?
Okay. Well, I think vendors are very nice people. They're just trying to make a living like everybody else, you know. So that's fine. And I think actually fair play to them, because I think actually it's the vendors and the techies that have pushed this stuff and help us get to where we are. But I think the conversation has got to change now in terms of how we get this out into the industry. And we've got to be using language that CEOs, MDs and middle managers understand, and the guys on site, you know. So we've got to be getting that across in those terms. Interoperability, I think that's why the UK strategy is deliberately technology neutral. That's why there is a very active vendor working group, which is getting all the major vendors together, and they meet regularly to talk about stuff and try and work out how we put this together. So this is why we're moving towards effectively an open BIM environment or an IFC-driven environment. Admittedly, there are problems, there are imperfections, but in any developing technology, there's always going to be bugs anyway, isn't there? So, but I think so my line on this, there isn't a sort of Betamax VHS type conversation going on here for those that are into that, but it's just simply, in the end, when we get there, I think all the platforms will talk to each other and it'll be a very seamless thing. Basically, if we did a poll here about the email packages and the internet browsers that we use and other things that we use on our PCs and Macs on a daily basis, they all talk to each other on the whole, you know, and we don't even think about it, you know. So why can't this be just the same? And I think in time it will be.
Thanks, John. Anything else? Yeah, Ralph.
The role of design manager before for the contractor. It would seem that contractors really need to develop a sort of in-house expertise and design manager role before you receive a paper drawing to pass them on to subcontractors. You asked at the beginning, if are they design managers? Is that an emerging role or is it an existing role?
I think certainly in the UK industry, it's a fairly well established role there. Usually, well, you find design managers in different organisations. They're mainly in contracting organisations, and they act as the interface between effectively site and procurement teams and design teams, and help manage the process. You do find them in client organisations. BAA, for instance, has a big team of design managers that you know, look at they're almost like pre-construction design managers, project managers, sorry. So it's just I think it's probably, we get hung up about roles and titles. I think actually the answer is think about what needs to be done in any given situation and who's best placed to do it. And whether that's the construction manager or the QS, I really don't care, so long as it gets done. Now it's interesting, in a BIM environment, we keep loading everything together and saying, okay, it's better if it's all integrated and it's all together and we have all this nice, fluffy collaboration where we're all friends and everybody's cosy and all that stuff. Does it have to be that? I've been thinking about this the last couple of weeks. Does it have to be like that? Because actually, I had this conversation with a QS on the train last week. What we can do in BIM is exchange information far more precisely, because you can check what I'm giving you and you can tell me whether it's BS or not. So we don't have to be friends to do that, you know. So because what BIM does, or BIM environment enables us to do, it takes out all this waste and rework and inaccuracy, or it can do if it's used properly, that we're so used to in the industry, and gives us a far more exact product or information package at any given stage. So I can hand it on to somebody and they can know immediately what they've got and they can work with it and they can give it back to me. So you could do a non-collaborative situation where actually we don't have to collaborate, I just have to do what I'm asked to do if I've got a precise set of requirements. I don't know, you know, it's just an interesting conversation, which I'd be interested to develop, really, you know.
It requires a technical expertise.
Yes, well that's right, yeah, but if that's a given, then why not? I don't know, you know.
Okay, John, thanks for that. Unfortunately, the time has gone.